You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Is downtown Seattle poised for a comeback? Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. You might say, who cares? It's Seattle. It's going in the dumpster. It's on the fast train to oblivion. All right. We still got a real estate market. That's what we're talking about today. One of my predictions early on at the beginning of the whole coronavirus meltdown here was that if you wanted a good return on your money, you'd buy a studio or a one-bedroom condominium in downtown Seattle or in any of the downtown cores. And people laughed at me and said, that is the stupidest idea ever. The downtown cores are gone forever. We're working from home. We're never going back. Huh. And how do you think that turned out? That's what we're going to talk about today. All right. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. But right now, we're just reading the news. Forget all that other stuff. We're reading the news, and we're actually doing a real estate story. Okay. It's from the Seattle Met. Is downtown Seattle poised for a real estate comeback? The further you go from Seattle, the more dramatic the market. But downtown Seattle is still experiencing a resurgence. So I get asked to look at appraisals pretty often, just from the standpoint of maybe my company didn't do the appraisal, Reynolds Kline Appraisal, but I get pulled in, hey, can you just give me, this appraisal came in really low from another company, and can you just take a quick peek and see if this is, am I way out of line here by thinking that maybe the value should be more than it should, than it came in at? And we've got some purchases going on right now. One of the examples that I have seen was property came on the market for $1.275. It went on the market. It went pending for way over 1.4, and the appraisal came in like $3,000 higher than the list price of 1.275. So massive difference between what it came on the market for versus what it went pending for versus what it's appraised for. And so you've got some stuff kind of going on like that. And a lot of it has to do with where the market is going and the shift. This property was north of downtown Seattle by probably 12 miles, 13 miles, pretty far north. It's not in downtown by any means. And those are the areas that have a decent commute into downtown, but have bigger houses, more bang for your buck. Those areas have gone berserk. But also, as more and more people go back to work in the downtown cores, traffic gets worse. And this is not just a Seattle phenomenon. This is every major metropolitan market. But in Seattle in particular, because I got to put this pen down, play with the stupid toy. In Seattle, we've got, in particular, in our downtown core, we've got Amazon and we've got Microsoft and we've got, everybody and their brother has an office space in downtown Seattle. And so that area in particular gets impacted when companies are like, oh, we don't really know when our employees are ever going to go back to the office. So there's some of that going on, but more and more companies just overall, there's more and more activity in downtown. And so this whole comeback thing, it's like it didn't ever leave, like old Cool J says. It's still been there. It's just, during the whole coronavirus thing, you didn't want to hunker down in a studio, 250 or 300 square foot studio. And to put that in terms, that's about, it's a little over half the size of a two-car garage being 21 by 22, 20 by 22, somewhere in there. Tough to get two regular size cars in much less than 22 feet width-wise. So you have a studio that's way less than that, and you're doing everything in that studio because nothing else is open in downtown. You can see why people left, right? A lot of trends that have been going on since pandemic lockdowns first started are continuing. A central location is less of a priority, and suburbs are heating up more than ever. I would say that is on the cusp of not being reality. I would say the suburbs are not cooling down, but there's definitely some activity happening where you're like, okay, yeah, all of those over list price purchases, Those aren't happening. We're having questions on appraisals. Maybe that market's thinning just a little bit. That's where I think what we're at right here on October 22nd. But as amenities return to denser urban areas and some return to offices, downtown condos are back on the rise. And the market is likely only going to get more competitive from here. If you're one of those folks who spends a ton of time working and you don't want to be stuck in your car in ridiculous rush hour traffic or just ridiculous traffic in general, like any big city has, then maybe you look at that condo in downtown again. The story is not entirely straightforward, though, and it won't be for a while. Since sales are reliably different each month of each year, and that's why I do the market in a minute, everything you need to know about the Puget Sound real estate market in 1 minute. I do that every month, so do a bunch of my brokers, so that you have an idea of what's going on. So you've got different sales each month of each year. Year-over-year stats tend to be more telling for things like sales prices and market demand. Yeah, year-over-year stats do. They give a big bird's eye picture. But if you're buying in the market right now, you want to know exactly what's going on. Well, what's happening? Because at the beginning of the year, a little different market. But 2020 was, to put it mildly, bonkers. Yeah, that was a weird market. There's still plenty to learn from last month's numbers. I'm going to say that was supposed to have been 2021. Yeah. First time I read it, I thought it was 2021. But there's still plenty to learn from last month's numbers. Pockets of King County are building momentum, but prices in outlying areas are growing a lot faster. You get more house, you get more bang for your buck. And those are also the places people can afford. You look at the markets close to the downtown areas, not affordable at all. Ridiculous. A trend that started far before the pandemic, but increased as buyers turned away from the city. Well, and then downtown Seattle, talking to one of my kids, my oldest son, who's an appraiser for me, and he was talking about doing a condo in Belltown, which is in downtown Seattle. And he was like, yeah, there was crazy guys on the street and you're just hurling beer bottles, breaking glass. I didn't feel safe. How are these people paying, $5, $6, $7 million for a condo and dealing with that right outside of their project? Like, I don't know. People just love downtown. They just love being in one of those big skyscrapers, to each their own. King County had a 6.7% increase in median sales price compared to this time in 2020, according to the MLS. While Pierce, which is down south, Kitsap, which is west, and Snohomish counties up north, saw prices rise between 16.6% and 18.4%, almost 17%, and call it 18.5%. Those are enormous increases, not sustainable. But, it is what it is. Pretty much everywhere is on fire in those three counties, but a few areas where high prices are meeting high sales include North Pierce County, around Fife and Sumner, and the southern parts of Tacoma, because they're affordable. That's where you can go get a decent house. You're going to have to do some commuting. And so that's what's impacting these markets is, your employment center, and in our MLS system, we've actually got a tool that allows you to search for homes based on commute times, based on drive times into the downtown cores. So that kind of gives you an idea. That's how drastic this has gotten as far as people trying to avoid traffic. And we've also got massive changes in Malt Lake Terrace as well. And that's because as the market continues to increase in value, buyers are forced to go just a little bit further out to get a little bit more house or to get a decent house. My oldest son, again, was looking at a house in, where was it? Madison Park, very, very expensive area just to the east of downtown Seattle. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, 1,000 square feet, and super tiny bedrooms. He described it to me, 4,000 square foot lot, so very small lot. And they were asking, I don't know, was it 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, something like that, something just ridiculous. But that's not a bad play, because how long is it going to be before that's 1.8? It's, these numbers are just crazy. And we talked about, he's looking at buying something in that kind of marketplace. because he's young, not married, doesn't have kids. He can do it, where other people are like, I got 3 kids. Where am I going to put them in the one bedroom that's not the primary bedroom? So, there's opportunities out there like that, but the vast majority of people, they're not going to take advantage of them, because who wants to buy a teardown and pay $1.3 million or $1.4 million? Not a lot of folks. But then again, there are a lot of folks that bailed on their studios and their 1 bedrooms in downtown Seattle at the beginning of the pandemic. There's always opportunity. So there are a few factors at play. Many businesses are only requiring a partial return to offices, and it's easier to have a lousy commute for 3 days versus 5. And I've read a lot of stories on small businesses that are really struggling because they keep getting told, these are the small supporting businesses. Maybe it's a deli, maybe it's a little drugstore that depends on having like 35,000 people within a couple of block radius in buildings. And those people aren't there, and they're not coming back anytime soon. Amazon has said, we're going to work from home indefinitely until we figure out this whole crazy, whatever is going on. I think it's easier to have their employees work from home than to mandate everybody get the vaccine and go down that route and all that stuff, right? So there's a few factors at play. Many businesses requiring a partial return because you get more home for less money. Some buyers, Gardner, he's the economist for Windermere, local brokerage here, says we're able to pay all cash from the profits they made on selling a home closer to town. That is definitely a trend too. So you're basically upgrading based on the ability to go a little bit further out. Maybe you don't have to go into the office as many times each week. And you can pay cash because you made so much money and you're getting more bang for your buck. This is not to say that more central locations aren't having their moments. Northeast Seattle, with its shiny new light rail station, is still cooling off after a frenzied year. But price-wise, most King County hotspots are outside of Seattle. The Eastside saw a 22.6% increase in sales prices. That's where I am. 22.6%. That is nuts. Wildly unsustainable. Not good for the marketplace. And yet here we are. I mean, I think my neighborhood in particular was probably up around 26, 27%. I mean, if you're a real estate person, if you're a homeowner, you're like, yes, I'm cashing out. I hit the jackpot. I'm going to Vegas. I'm putting it all in black. Maybe red, maybe black. I don't know. I'm just putting it all in something, right? So the Eastside saw a 22.6% increase in sales prices, especially concentrated in Newcastle, which is a suburb south of Bellevue by 8 miles, 10 miles, something like that. And Issaquah area, that's on the foothills of the Cascade Mountains outside of Bellevue, and in Kirkland. So these are all not immediately in Bellevue or Redmond. They are the next cities out. They're getting all of the pressure right now in the marketplace. Outside of the ritzy Highlands, Renton sales prices jumped 20.2%. with an even bigger increase in closed sales at 34.7%. So you've just got this pressure that just keeps on going. And it's becoming really segmented because people can only afford, certain marketplaces. And so that's where they're going. All right, this is as close as I can get with the budget I've got. I'm still going to be commuting. I can make this commitment. People living way out in the boondocks, yeah, that's not so much of a thing anymore. I think employers want to see their employees in the office, and they want them, if you're a couple of states away, that is not a reality anymore. I think you're just going to have to be close. You're going to have to be within, call it a couple hours drive. And then you've basically got your vacation home. And we're talking truly about people with a bunch of money, right? You've got your vacation home, and then you've got maybe your condo or whatever in the downtown core. That's just kind of how this housing market is working out. Where is the affordable housing? Yeah, there isn't any. It doesn't exist. A sea of change for downtown condos. Here's kind of going back to some of my predictions I made about a year and a half ago. As people have sought out more space, condo prices have stayed pretty stagnant all year. I would agree with that. We've had quite a few condo listings, and I've had to tell my brokers, hey, you just got to hang in there. It will sell. You've got some competition there because people have just probably in the last 3-4 months felt like there's enough of a marketplace to actually put their studio, their 1-bedroom, their 2-bedroom on the market, and it'll sell. Before that, it was tough. And that's what's kept prices stagnant while the rest of the market is just going bonkers. So condo prices have stayed pretty stagnant all year, especially in Seattle proper. But as many reasons to live downtown come back, we just had Climate Pledge Arena have their first concert. They had the Foo Fighters and who else opened up? I want to say Sunny Day Real Estate, and that is not correct. Another Seattle band. Maybe it was a band out of Bellingham. I'll think of it. I'll get back to you. But the Foo Fighters played opening show this last Tuesday. And so, you've got stuff opening up back again. You've got offices, entertainment, bars, restaurants. Moneyed buyers are flooding back. MLS data shows that pending sales increased 36.7% in downtown and Belltown. That's where my kid's complaining about walking on the street, being kind of scared because you got homeless, crazy people shattering beer bottles against the sidewalk and openly doing so. And everybody's just kind of minding their own business. This is normal. Just don't get in their way. And yet, the rest of the country looks in and goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can have that. You can keep that. It's all right." And Seattle just keeps rolling. So you got sales up 36.7% in downtown and Belltown. Those are the areas everybody predicted. Those are gone forever. We're never going back to those areas. And closed sales soared a whopping 126%. 126%. Closed sales are up year over year. That's the run you're looking for. That's the run that everybody said would never be there, but it is, and that's just because urban land economics, they kind of work in a certain way, right? So, but demand never left. Well, a lot of the demand did leave, but demand never left. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. All right. And those sales numbers are not even the highest this year. In the spring and summer, prices in the area dropped, but demand kept rising as downtown living became more affordable to many people who were priced out. They're getting back in. Well, that ship has pretty much sailed now. Congratulations. Anybody who bought before this month, it adds more economic diversity to downtown in the longer term. What are we even saying there? What are you even saying? Don't really know. What we saw when the pandemic hit was a massive increase in supply, says Gardner, all right, and demand just dropped out. There was a lot of concern that people were just going to be fleeing downtown because of coronavirus, and that was going to cause a collapse in the market. You didn't have a collapse. But demand dried up. And when that happens, you got a lot of supply. And if you got to sell, you got to drop those prices. You did see that, but it wasn't a collapse. When condo prices started to adjust in response to high inventory and low demand, he notes, something different happened. I think there were a lot of people that before the pandemic had always wanted to move downtown, but they couldn't afford it, he explains. And all of a sudden, we started to see that price change occurring. All of a sudden they could, so that demand got backfilled. So yeah, that happened. Still, after months of increased sales, inventory is starting to decrease, which could drive up prices more. While from the outside, it looks like new condos are getting built all the time, most of that construction is luxury rentals. Man, we've got a lot of rentals because you've got these massive corporations coming in and putting up these enormous projects. They're the ones that can fund this stuff. Your average local developer just doesn't have a chance. You've got investors coming in from out of the country. You've got investors coming in from New York, from LA. And you read the stories all the time. I do. You don't have to. You can just trust me, right? Would I lie to you? Come on now. With high construction costs and an uncertain market, developers and builders are holding back more than usual, says RealLogic Sotheby's International Realty. I think we're heading into another year of ascension where there's only going to be more people coming downtown and there's going to be a very finite amount of supply, he says. Interesting. You mean kind of like basic downtown urban land economics. Okay. 2 downtown condo buildings are currently in pre-sales, and after those units are finished and occupied in 2022, he thinks it will likely take several years for any significant supply of new apartments or condos to return, because you had this big lull. Stuff that's going to be built out here soon, that's been in the works for a while, because development of these big projects takes years. Not as long as in Cali, but years nonetheless. These year-to-year changes are compared to a truly abysmal 2020 for condos. Yeah, 2020 was terrible for condos, straight up. And we still have a pretty uncertain future in terms of having to leave the house. But at the very least, the numbers indicate downtown is returning to something much closer to its pre-pandemic state, for better or for worse. Now, some of the streets you go into in downtown, and a lot of the downtown cores around the United States, they're rough. I mean, they are rough. And that's because during the pandemic, we allowed the homeless encampments to kind of do their own thing. And they did. And it's not, the city of Seattle has cleared out a lot of them. But I think the idea still is there that it's their turf. And with the rise in crime, and I was just reading a article somebody sent, one of you fine listeners or viewers sent me, about yet another major, was it a Target in downtown San Francisco, I think it was. They're losing $25,000 a day due to shoplifting. And so they're going to have to shut that store down. It's the biggest store in downtown. I think it's in the Mission District. I'll probably do a podcast on that, but it was just like $25,000 a day. That is a lot of stuff from Target. I mean, if you're at like an REI, yeah, that's 3 or 4 handfuls. But at Target, that's a big haul. So you've got this narrative of in the downtown cores, rising crime, and it's a little rough. And in downtown Seattle, you've got the whole homeless thing going on, and that's difficult. And nobody has a real solution to that. But people are still buying units there, and they want to live there, because I guess they just ignore everything going on the sidewalk out in front of the project. Of course, condo sales aren't limited to downtown, but few other Seattle neighborhoods have the same sample size. You just don't have a ton of condos. We've got some condos over here in the Eastside, but the majority of our condos are located in downtown. Outside of downtown Seattle, you've just got a lot of suburban markets. You don't have the big urban markets that you might in other areas. West Seattle in particular is taking a condo price nosedive. Well, they don't have a bridge, and West Seattle's kind of an island. And when you don't really have a bridge getting you there, and you have to go way far south to get to West Seattle, it doesn't help. Despite a 6.8% increase in median sales prices overall, condo prices dropped almost 10% since this time last year. And that's why the market's just, it's not desirable right now. Hard to get to, commute's horrible. Condo prices are ticking up in Northwest Seattle neighborhoods like Fremont, Green Lake, and Ballard. So Ballard, which has the Ballard Commons, which is one of the homeless encampments that we're going to be doing some look to, because it's going to get a sweep here shortly. And, in spite of these areas just having massive homeless encampments, you've got a 10.5% jump in median sales price. Yeah, I know. It's nuts. But this is just our market. People really want to live in these communities. And we're having that struggle with the whole unhoused. Where do you put them? Not in my backyard. All right, what do you do? And yeah, it's affecting a lot of things, but it's not affecting appreciation, believe it or not. Elsewhere, beach homes leave a mark. Some have taken greater work from home opportunities as a chance to leave city life behind entirely. Talked about that a little bit, right? And a lot of them apparently ran to the beach. I just did a podcast on, I should stop saying that and just say, we talked about the other day, flood insurance going up, because that's been subsidized by government, FEMA. Now that's going to actually start to look more like what it would actually cost if you didn't have subsidized insurance. Are people still going to be running to the beach? Well, the beach is cool. But if you got to pay the full Monty, 25 grand for an insurance policy a year, maybe not. Closed sales along the Pacific coast went way up over the spring, and while purchases have decreased, the prices have not. Pacific County, which includes Long Beach, that's on the coast of Washington, over there, west, saw price increases of more than 40% year over year each month since July. Each month. Crazy. Other coastal locales have seen dramatic changes of their own. Okay, so we're not going to get into that because you don't know where those are and you don't care. But this is just a trend. I mean, and people have run to those communities. I don't think that'll be long term because I think that's a lot of that is just folks. All right, this certain segment of people they were going to get out anyway. The COVID basically helped move that along. I would like to move now. While you'd think San Juan County, which is way north in San Juan Islands and west, would be running with this pack, that market had already exploded a little too hard after a frenzied 146% increase in sales and 47.3% price hike back in April, up almost 150% and up almost 50% in appreciation in a year. Things have finally calmed down with a 46.1% decrease in closures and prices holding steady. So that's kind of gone way up and you're coming down and you're leveling out a little bit. That's the San Juan Islands. Everybody just, let's get as far away from the Rona as we possibly can. Let's go up to San Juan County, San Juan Islands, and they are beautiful, but it takes a while to get there. The big real estate picture. So how fast is Seattle growing compared to other areas? The CaseShiller Home Price Index crunches numbers for metropolitan areas throughout the country. You're probably familiar with that if you're in real estate at all. And while they lag behind a few months, it can lend a bigger picture of what the city looks like on the national stage. Numbers for July were released at the end of September, and the Seattle area had the third highest year-over-year jump in home prices compared to other major metropolitan areas at 25.5%. Again, unsustainable, crazy. Don't look for that next year. But one of the wild deals, and let's finish this out though. And so Seattle, 25.5% compared to a 19.7% increase nationwide. So Seattle's numbers, I mean, it sounds fantastic and crazy. Fantastic if you're a seller, horrible if you're a buyer. And those are a lot of the struggles going on right now. But across the United States, on average, 19.7%, almost 20%. That's nuts. So nationwide, real estate market on fire. We know that. Seattle on fire, plus some, and then a little more. None of these numbers are sustainable. It's crazy. But then the flip side is, what's it going to take to slow this down? Yeah, something on the worldwide scale. Interest rates bumping up a bunch. They bumped up some. They haven't bumped up a ton. I think they're gonna. At some point in time, you have to go from historically low to something other than historically low. And with the inflation, numbers, although we're told that it's temporary, I don't know. Supply chain stuff we've got going on. Just the overall instability, that's not a word, instability with a lot of our markets. See a big run in interest rates? That would cool things down. That's definitely going to cool down the refinance market. That has been just on fire because everybody, every quarter point tick down in interest rates, people are out just refinancing. And we do an appraisal each time they do that. Crazy. What about the rent? There's more of the same in the rental market, bigger jumps outside Seattle than in it. Apartment List calculates a 12% jump in Seattle rent from this time last year, but the surrounding areas are seeing even bigger changes, including, so we got Kent down south, Everett up north, Redmond, Microsoft, Bothell, just a little bit north of Redmond, and Linwood to the west of Bothell, Tacoma down south, Bellevue where I am. Tacoma and Bellevue both increased by nearly 19%. Tacoma, because it's affordable and that's where people can actually rent a home. Bellevue, because you can't afford a home in Bellevue. It's outrageous. And so, yeah, I'll rent a house. I want to be close to Microsoft. I want to be close to whatever it is, Amazon. I don't want to live in downtown because of the guys throwing beer bottles in the sidewalk. So I'm going to live in a suburb. How far out do I have to go to get something in a decent neighborhood? All right, I'm going to pay 19% more than last year. That's kind of how it goes. While Seattle's rent is still higher than Renton or Kent, rents are noticeably higher in the places I just talked about right around here. You have to take rental data with a larger grain of salt than sales data. The record-keeping requirements are much less strict, and there's not a lot of cold, hard data to work with. And that's because majority of all rental properties, they're landlords who don't submit their data to an MLS database, or maybe big apartment complexes. They have their own in-house rental units. And by units, I mean rental departments that, a couple of people that run those rental departments, and they're not required to record how much, the rents are actually going for, how much they've dropped or how much they've increased. They're not required to do that. There's not a database anywhere there are some databases that kind of track it, but there isn't the closed sales like we have recording at the county recorder's office. You don't have that hard cold data and the MLS data, which is it's accurate. I mean, you can go look there, and then if you need to, you go to the recorder's office and you confirm your sales price there. So sales data, there's just a ton more reliable information than rental. But that doesn't take a lot of work to figure out that rents are on the rise. And we've talked about that a lot here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, and particularly in Seattle. And like I've said more than once, when you reduce supply as far as the rental housing goes, those prices, they've got one way to go, and that is not down. How about that? So when you take a look at rental data with a larger grain of salt than sales data, the record-keeping requirements are, companies that calculate monthly data skew toward numbers in larger luxury buildings, okay? But it's still useful for looking at bigger picture trends, especially if the source weighs data against more reliable but slower moving census data. Okay, know that rents are going through the roof right now. That's just bottom line, I think. Because you've got a real estate market that is already unaffordable for a lot of folks, for most folks, in my opinion. And so that's why people are going further out, and that's creating this suburban, just massive push. And this thing about downtown, is it coming back? Well, it wasn't ever truly out of it, but it certainly got bruised. It got beaten up a little bit. But when else have we had a global pandemic where we've had to lock down? Not in my lifetime, right? No, not in my lifetime. So there you have it. Yeah. Still got a real estate market on fire, and there isn't a ton to slow it down, but there's always something. Something always comes up. So you want to check back right here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast and see what that is. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being a part. And sending in your comments and your stories and all that good stuff. That's kind of what makes it fun for me, is to get all the impact or all the feedback from people that, hey, here's what's going on in my life. So thank you. I will catch up with you soon. Until then, stay safe, make good choices. We'll talk then. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.